This hour of the Costa Report is brought to you by IBM. Big data at the speed of business. Welcome to the Costa Report. I'm Bill Graff, and I'm sitting in for Rebecca Costa today. She's in Australia speaking at the FSC conference, and she planned to do the broadcast live from the town of Cairns, but we hit a bit of technical issues with 2 satellite bounces, and she asked me to guest host, which is, after all, an honor, and I'm happy to do so. As many of you already know, I help produce and engineer this program, and I join here in the second hour every week, so I'm familiar with what Rebecca does. We have quite a program for you today. In just a moment, former Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar will be joining us. We'll be talking about the reasons he supports the building of the Keystone Pipeline and just where energy policy in the United States is headed. But before Mr. Salazar does join us, let me tell you a little about his background, as is Rebecca's custom. Kenneth Lee Salazar was born in Alamosa, Colorado. His ancestors made that part of the country their home in the 16th century, when it was part of New Spain. He is one of those rare Americans whose family did not immigrate to this country, but instead was here long before the United States came into existence. Salazar earned his undergraduate degree in political science from Colorado College and his law degree from the University of Michigan. After graduating law school, Salazar practiced law before becoming the chief counsel to Governor Roy Romer in 1986. Later, Governor Romer appointed him to become the director of the Department of Natural Resources in Colorado. Then in 1999 and again in 2002, Salazar was elected Attorney General, where he is credited with instituting a gang prosecution unit, an environmental crimes unit, a general fugitive crime unit to target murderers, and for strengthening fraud laws. In 2005, he was elected Senator of Colorado, a position he served until 2009 when he was appointed Secretary of the Interior by President Barack Obama. As Secretary, Salazar oversaw agencies in charge of water management, fish, wildlife, mining, public lands, national parks, and relations with the American Indians. Mr. Salazar retired from that post last year and joined the law firm of Wilmer, Cutler, Pickering, Hale, and Dorr. It's my pleasure to welcome to the Costa Report former Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar. Welcome, Mr. Salazar. We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you very much, Bill. Good to be with you.
I know that one of the reasons Rebecca wanted to invite you onto the show is that you don't always see environmental and business interests at odds with one another. In those instances where, with a little bending, you saw benefits to both sides, you came under fire from both environmentalist and corporation interests. So if you don't mind, I'd like to start with the Keystone Pipeline as an example. Is there a way for the pipeline to be a plus for the environment and for energy independence at the same time?
Bill, first let me say it's great to be on the Costa show. It's a great show, and I like to listen to it as well. On your question on the Keystone Pipeline, I think that part of what has happened here is that the debate has been framed in a way that overlooks some very important conservation values that could be brought about with the pipeline. And just to sum it up, I think that if you look at the places where the pipeline is traversing, it's traversing some of the most important ecosystems of the nation, including Dakota grasslands, the prairie potholes, places in Nebraska which have some of the most important wildlife values in America. And I've always thought that if the pipeline were to be built, that one of the things that could happen is that you could essentially put into place as a term and condition of the pipeline the revenue stream that would help in the preservation of the Dakota grasslands and the prairie potholes. Much of that acreage is now being turned over, plowed over by farmers. These are ranch lands that have been there forever, but because of the high price of corn and other commodities, they're being plowed over at the rate of thousands of acres a year. So organizations like Ducks Unlimited, during my time as Secretary of Interior, we worked very hard on the protection and long-term preservation of that very important area. So I think there could be structured a win-win for the environment that at the same time would allow the pipeline to move forward. And at the end of the day, if we don't bring the oil in from Canada, it's going to be brought in from some other place.
Well, a month ago, the State Department agreed with you, reporting that with no major environmental objections, is there any standing in the way of the pipeline at this point? I mean, is it a go?
Bill, it's not yet a go because the State Department still will have to issue its permit, and we don't know yet what the terms and conditions will be of the permit, or whether the Department of State will decide that it's not going to issue the permit. So it could go either way, and I don't have any insider information as to which way it ultimately will go. My own view is A, it should go, and B, if it does go, then you should have terms and conditions attached to the permit that would allow for a major conservation matter to be addressed as a high priority for the North America and conservation agenda.
Well, the other thing we should talk about when we talk about the Keystone Pipeline is a $7 billion project. It's been a long time since we've had that kind of a project of this geographic magnitude as well. The pipeline would extend from Western Canada to the Texas coast. What's the plan for tackling the project environmentally? Do you start at one end and go all the way along, taking care of things, or do you try to do it all at once?
Well, the southern leg of the pipeline has already been built. So what's here in the U.S. is a big portion of it has already been built. What has not been built is the transboundary pipeline that would bring the oil from Canada. And we also need to recognize that there's already a number of pipelines that bring oil from Canada into the United States, and those were approved without the same kind of controversy that has been attracted by the Keystone Pipeline. So in terms of the mitigation for the environment, I think that because the permit will cover the extent of the pipeline, the environmental mitigation, the conservation measures that should be put into place should be put into the area of the pipeline itself. And that's in the Dakotas, Nebraska, and through the areas that the pipeline will traverse. There's a important link here to climate change and to CO2 emissions, because one of the arguments that is made against the pipeline is that you shouldn't have more oil coming through the pipeline because it's going to increase CO2 emissions. I think the counter argument to that is, one, the oil that's going to be consumed here in the U.S. is nonetheless going to be consumed. It'll just come from Saudi Arabia or Venezuela or some other place. Mm-hmm. But secondly, the carbon dioxide emissions, frankly, that come from the plowing up of all these lands in Nebraska and South Dakota and North Dakota, all those lands are now carbon sinks. They sequester carbon biologically. So whenever you have vast extents of grasslands or biological systems here in the United States or anywhere in the world, they sequester carbon. That's what we see happening, for example, in the tropical forests and the Amazon. They are huge carbon sinks. The same thing is true here in the United States, whether it's in Florida and the Everglades, or whether it's in places like North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska. So I think the preservation of those carbon sinks also helps us address the reality of climate change.
Mm-hmm. If you don't mind me asking you, assuming we get the pipeline started, how long before we see the benefits of the pipeline?
Once projects like this are permitted, they're very quick to come online. And so I don't know what the construction schedule is, but I assume they would all be done within a relatively small period of time. I think less than a couple of years.
Well, that's good news.
Along those lines, what would happen, Bill, is you still have you have the pipeline that will be functional for a number of decades, and as oil flows through the pipeline, it would be good to be able to also say that we're doing some great things in the name of conservation, that we're protecting.
Sir, I hate to interrupt you. We've got a hard break coming up here. If you'll keep that thought, I'll ask you about those benefits on the other side. You're listening to the Costa Report.
Now, if you've been listening to the Costa Report, you know that I'm a big fan of wines by Caraccioli Cellars. And today I'm here with Scott Caraccioli, who's one of the brains behind the most memorable wines money can buy. So I have a question for you. How did your family get into the wine business?
2006, my father, his brother, and uncle were really playing with the idea of planting a vineyard, and planting a vineyard turned into making a bottle, turned into making sparkling wine when Michelle came into the picture. So it was really kind of an organic situation, us being in agriculture in the Salinas Valley, and then the extension of that went to grapes, and here we are today. To find out more about Caraccioli wines, visit us at www.caracciolicellars.com or stop by our tasting room in downtown Carmel, California. That's Caraccioli Cellars, Caraccioli, Cellars, where one bottle is never enough.
Do you love creating salads as much as you enjoy eating them? Hi, I'm Amy Tobin, cookbook author and culinary expert. Dole inspires fresh and wholesome dishes for any meal with their wide selection of salad blends and all-natural salad kits. From the mild and tender texture of sweet butter lettuce to the crunch of classic romaine sprinkled with colorful shredded carrots and red cabbage, Dole has over 30 salad blends to satisfy every palate. If you're looking for the ultimate in convenience, try Dole's unique salad kit combinations that include farm-fresh lettuces and vegetables, mouth-watering all-natural toppings, and specially made dressings. It's all you need to make a distinctively delicious salad. The possibilities are endless. Visit www.dolesalads.com for recipes and other ideas to feed your culinary imagination.
Whoa, Sydney! What are you doing beating the crap out of your laptop?
This lousy thing runs so slow and then it crashes. My dial-up connection in the 90s was faster.
Have you tried restarting it?
3 times, Sam! But I find that technology works better when you beat on it a few times.
Well, hold on there, Rocky. There's a better way to handle your computer problems. You need the fast, friendly computer pros at User Friendly Computing. Just drop it off at their office at 505 River Street, across from the Gateway Plaza, and mention KSCO to get a free $50 diagnostic, or give them a call at 831-423-9653, and they'll come to you. PC or Mac, desktop or laptop, they can do it all at User Friendly Computing. Call 831-423-9653. 423-9653.
Hi, this is Ethan Behrman, a host on the ZBS Radio Network, and I'd like to introduce you to the all-new ZBSRadio.com. ZBS Radio brings you a variety of talk radio programming on subjects like health and nutrition, politics, personal finance, gardening, pet care, technology, and so much more. At ZBSRadio.com, you'll find podcasts, as well as live and on-demand streams of exciting and informative talk radio programming that's available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on your computer or mobile phone. Listen on the web using our streaming player or in your iTunes or other listening software. Also, be sure to check the app section of our website to find mobile apps that make listening to your favorite shows even easier. Check the shows page at zbsradio.com to see our current lineup of shows. New shows will be added all the time. Thank you for listening to the ZBS Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Costa Report. I'm Bill Graff, sitting in for Rebecca Costa. Our guest today is former Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar. And before the break, we were talking about the benefits of the Keystone Pipeline, and I had to interrupt him because of the hard break. I would like you to finish. We got you started, and then I had to cut you off.
No problem, Bill. I just think that a conservation royalty, kind of like we have in oil and gas production from the Gulf of Mexico and the Outer Continental Shelf, that provides funding for the Land and Water Conservation Fund, the same kind of concept might be able to create a win-win solution if the pipeline is, in fact, permitted and constructed.
Sure. Well, continuing on the topic now of energy independence, Rebecca isn't here today, but she uses a term frequently, which I've kind of adopted myself. She claims that she got the term studying your policies as Secretary of the Interior. She says that you're an advocate of something she calls provisional drilling. Now, is this accurate as a description of how you approach the lease and permit requests on public and private lands and offshore?
Well, I don't know that I'd put the label on it, provisional drilling, because I'm not sure that people know what that means. I would simply say it that we should be drilling for oil and gas in the right places and with the right protections for the environment. Historically, what has happened is oil and gas drilling has been done kind of on a laissez-faire, drill anywhere, everywhere, under every rock. And more what's happening is the best practices are being developed. The best oil and gas companies recognize that they shouldn't be developing oil and gas structures in ecologically sensitive areas. They've developed new technologies to do horizontal drilling so that they can get oil from places far away from where the wellhead is located. So what I think that my approach to oil and gas drilling is oil and gas is part of our energy portfolio for the nation. We are in a very good place in America today relative to the amount of energy that we're producing. And as we continue to produce it, we just have to be smart about where we actually are getting it from.
No question, though, that the leaders who impose conditions and restrictions on the leases are continually attacked by environmental groups. And unfortunately, the mismanagement of the government's Mineral Management Service seems to have fueled, suspicions that big oil and government might be in collusion. How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't think that's the case. I mean, I do think there were many issues with the Minerals Management Services before we actually cleaned up that agency when I was Secretary of Interior. Mm-hmm. But looking ahead in terms of how you deal with both public and private lands, there ought to be places where it's appropriate to drill. There are places where it's not appropriate to drill. I don't think that Americans nor environmentalists nor oil and gas companies would want drilling to occur within the borders of our national parks. I think that's a decision. Those decisions have been made. Now, there are other parts of the public estate and the Bureau of Land Management, for example, where those decisions are tougher to make because drilling of oil and gas is allowed on public lands, and it's a significant part of the national energy resource that we currently use from those lands. And so there, the kind of master leasing programs that are being developed in places like Utah and other places are guiding the drilling to occur in the best places for drilling and avoiding the places that have conflict with important ecological values.
Mr. Salazar, what would you say about the environmentalists who do worry that even though with conditions imposed, it might be too easy for enforcement to falter and another deep horizon event to take place?
Well, I think they have a good point, and that is that it doesn't do any good to have rules if, in fact, they're not going to be enforced. And it doesn't do any of us any good if we have intentions and good rules, but we don't have the personnel resources or the technical resources to be able to carry on the enforcement. And so I think, from that point of view, they raise a very valid concern. The hope here is that you do have the right regulatory regime in place so that you don't have another Deepwater Horizon. And in order to have that regulatory structure in place, it also needs to have the right personnel. They have to be trained in the right way, and you have to be able to make sure that you do the job. I'll say this about the Gulf of Mexico and America's current production of oil and gas from the Gulf. About a third of the energy that we use in the United States actually comes from the Gulf of Mexico, so it's a huge part of our national security, our economic security, and our environmental security as well.
Well, let me ask you about this because that brings up an interesting point. Rebecca talked recently with Bob Graham, the former governor of Florida, on this very program, and she said that The governor made a trip to Cuba because they're less than 90 miles off our shore, and their drilling practices, how do I put this delicately, they're just not the same standard as ours. And, what happens if they drill a well out there and they have a deep horizon event themselves, in Cuba? That affects us.
Oh, very, very much so, Bill. And so Senator Graham raised a very valid concern there, and it's a very real issue. Cuba does not have the capacity nor the regulatory regime really to deal with the same issues that we do on our part of the Gulf of Mexico. And so when you look at the Gulf of Mexico, it's essentially one pond, and it's shared mostly by the United States and the country of Mexico. There's a small portion that Cuba has, and so it ought to be a real concern. What happens with exploration, drilling, and production activities off the coast of Cuba, and as importantly, off the coast of Mexico. How could that impact the United States? And obviously, we're not the sovereigns that govern those waters, but it ought to be, and I know is a big concern of the United States.
A great deal was made in the last presidential election about the decline in oil leases and permits under the Obama administration, which I don't think was actually accurate, but there has been a big decrease, certainly not by half as was expressed during one debate, but while you were sitting as Secretary of the Interior, would you set that record straight for us?
I think the first point of the record is that within the administration and all of the above energy strategy, which I helped craft for the president, we made it clear that oil and gas was part of that portfolio. We embraced diversity in our fuel mix, including major progress on standing up renewable energy, both on private lands and public lands, solar, wind, and geothermal energy. We were strong on moving forward with efficiency, including having our transportation economy, our vehicles make better mileage than they ever have in the past. But oil and gas is very much a part of the portfolio, so we sometimes get attacked, and the administration gets attacked for not supporting oil and gas. I think that's not true. I think the administration has supported oil and gas development on public lands. The fact is, we continue to lease significant amounts of acreage for oil and gas production, both onshore as well as offshore, and continue to grant permits for oil and gas exploration and development.
All right. Well, we have more with Ken Salazar. We have to take another hard break. Stay right where you are. We'll be right back with more from the former Secretary of the Interior in just a moment.
If you listen to the news today, you might come away with the impression that our biggest challenges are political and economic. But if this were true, then countries which have different political and economic systems would be facing different problems. But they aren't. Every government and every nation is struggling with job creation, debt, immigration, climate change, terrorism, healthcare, energy, and wild swings in financial markets. So something else must be going on. That's why I'm inviting you to get a copy of The Watchman's Rattle, a book which shows how the Roman, Mayan, and Khmer empires once faced similar challenges and what we can do to avoid their fate. Visit RebeccaCosta.com today and get a copy of The Watchman's Rattle, because once you do, you'll never look at the world the same way.
Here's some Friday fun for you in beautiful Watsonville. The grand opening of a brand new Ace Hardware in Watsonville's East Lake Village. Join the entire Ace crew and me, Charles Friedman, Friday, noon to 2 at the new Ace Hardware. We'll treat you to free hot dogs and soft drinks. Come on over and get in on the fun. You'll get to meet the really cool Ace people who always greet you at the front door, Ace store owners and sibling rivalists, Manuel and Carlos Rodriguez, lots of community VIPs, great deals throughout the store, and of course, Charles Friedman this Friday, noon to 2 at the new Ace Hardware, 1056 East Lake Avenue, Watsonville.
Healthy Way. Healthy Way Radio. Let's go back to the phones. We have Sonia on the line. Sonia, how's that Healthy Way diet been working for you?
It's been working great for me. I have lost 30 pounds in just 3 months, 4 pant sizes.
Oh, Awesome.
and 47 inches.
Wow.
I'm a new mom. I was an insulin-dependent diabetic with high blood pressure, and in just 3 months, I've completely reversed my diabetes. I gave myself 4 insulin injections in my stomach every day from my diabetes, and I have completely lost all medications, and I'm now 100% diet controlled.
Now that is a real Healthy Way success story.
I love the Healthy Way. I cannot say enough good things about it. Everyone here has been so supportive, and it has been the easiest thing I have ever done for myself.
You folks out there listening, this could be you. All you got to do is call 462-5900. Go in for a free consultation. And yes, tell them everyone sent you.
So we decided to upgrade the look of our home.
You know, improve the curb appeal.
We decided to add the look of stone to the exterior.
We really like the stacked stone look.
Yeah, but when I checked into the price, it was ridiculous. No way could we afford it.
Then a friend told me about Genstone, Genstone.
Genstone comes in lightweight panels. They've actually engineered the hassle out of installation. No mortar, no mesh. It was easy. Even I could do it.
We just screwed the panels to the wall and it looks like stone. I mean, it really looks like stone.
Yeah, from the box to the wall in minutes.
We love the look of our home now.
And Genstone is durable, comes with a 25-year warranty, and offers additional R-value for insulation.
If you want the look of stone at a price you can afford, call Genstone at 800-955-STONE.
Trust me, you'll save money.
And you'll love the look. 800-955-STONE. That's 800-955-7866.
Visit GenstoneProducts.com.
How many lawyers does it take to answer a legal question? The answer is 2. Join my co-hosts, law professor Stephen Wagner and me, Dean Mitchell Winnick, Saturday afternoons from 4 to 5 p.m. here on KSCO AM 1080 for Wagner and Winnick on the Law. Saturday, 4 p.m., we invite you to call in and join the discussion.
Welcome back to the Costa Report. I'm Bill Graff, sitting in for Rebecca Costa, who's speaking in Australia today. And if you're just joining us, our guest is former Secretary of the Interior, Mr. Ken Salazar. When it comes to energy independence, we seem to have 2 main levers in this country. One of those levers is for a cutback on use. The other lever is for an increase in production. And assuming that, well, thanks to hybrid cars and energy-efficient appliances and light bulbs and so on, we're doing our best to cut back energy use. Let's talk about production. Presently, we have to buy oil from OPEC to make up for the shortfall between what we need and what we produce. But we have ample natural gas reserves, so much so that even without the Keystone Pipeline, we could probably become OPEC independent by switching from oil to natural gas. Is that right, Mr. Salazar?
Well, we can become more energy secure, and there can be significant savings by using natural gas, for example, for long-haul trucks and for many other uses. And that is, in fact, occurring just because of the economics of the much less expensive natural gas than other kinds of fuel. But just a quick comment. One is on your cutback comment. That is true. There's a lot that's going on in that space here in the United States. There's still a lot more that can go on. And so I think there can be a lot less energy that can be used. In terms of increased production, yes, there's a huge boom that's going on right now in the United States on oil and gas. We're producing more oil and more gas than we have in any time in the recent history of the United States. But it's also important to recognize that there's also other energy forms that are coming into the market in significant ways. Solar energy, the largest solar commercial utility-powered plants in the world are now here in the United States. So there's a lot that's happening in terms of production that goes beyond oil and gas.
Well, let's talk about that since you brought it up. What are some of the other lesser-known ways we can save energy? You know, solar, obviously, and some of the wind generation. But, well, you have to put up an awfully big wind farm to generate the kind of electricity we use in this country. You'd have to put solar panels on every structure we ever had to make up the shortfall there. What else are they working on in the world of energy, alternative energy?
So the diversity of our energy portfolio in the United States continues to grow. And, in fact, on both wind and solar, we're seeing the cost of both wind and solar coming down, and a very significant percentage of the electricity that we now are using in many of our states in the United States is coming from wind energy alone.
Mm-hmm.
There's been about a tenfold increase in the amount of wind energy. And when you think about solar, some of the plants that we now are operating that are operational in the United States are producing as much electricity as a regular coal-fired power plant. And so there's a lot of that that's going on. But beyond that, the future is in the hands of unfolding, evolving technology, the creation of biodiesels from algae and from other biofuels, a plant that is being opened up in Hugoton, Texas, or Hugoton, Kansas, that's actually going to be an advanced biofuel complex. And so there's just a whole host of those sorts of things that are going on beyond just oil and gas.
What about the problem we had? There was a huge, I don't know how to put this delicately. I guess I'll just say it. Solyndra caused a big problem for the, for the folks who might want to invest in alternative energy, things like solar. How do you get around something like a risky venture that ended up being Solyndra?
Bill, those kinds of things will happen. Solyndra was a bad thing. It created lots of problems, not only for Solyndra, obviously, that went into bankruptcy, but also for the whole program because it put a blemish on the whole program. But for every Solyndra, you have hundreds of examples out there of projects that, in fact, are working. We have transformed the potential for renewable energy in this nation just in the last 5-6 years alone. The amount of our electricity that's now being produced by wind power and solar energy across the country is, it's grown by leaps and bounds. Now, there's some problems with that or some challenges because, the sun doesn't shine 24 hours a day, so you have to think about storage. But there's also ways in which the sun can be used with natural gas, so that you actually have plants that are fueled by cogeneration. They're fueled by the power of the sun when the sun is out and electricity is being produced and put on the grid. When the sun's not out because it's cloudy or it's nighttime, then the natural gas kicks on. Mm-hmm. So there's a way in which technology is helping in revolutionary ways, getting us to the energy security for the country.
In your own home state, you've made leaps and bounds in deploying alternative energy in conjunction with reducing consumption. Talk a little bit about that, how you managed to do that in your home state.
Well, I'm biased, Bill, because I love Colorado. I was born there, and I don't know where I'll die, but I know that I'm going to be buried there. And I just love the innovation and sort of the common sense Western view that Colorado takes on things. And, in the area of energy, the group of us put together an amendment called Amendment 37 that created a renewable portfolio standard and mandated that 10% of the energy for the state would come from renewable energy by 2015. That spawned the creation of huge wind farms out on the eastern plains of Colorado, and has spawned a renewable energy industry that is helping the Colorado economy in major ways. And that standard has since been changed from the time that it was adopted to twice the number, so it's now 20%. So I just think what Colorado has done is being done in a number of other states. I think there's now over 30 states that have adopted their own renewable portfolio standard. And we're seeing new energies power America every day, in part because these common sense policies have been put into place.
In your view, has too much of the focus on energy independence moved to the federal level when it really should, in fact, be state governments that do this?
Well, I think state governments are doing it because the federal government is dysfunctional relative to being able to pass long-term policies at this point in time. There has not been an energy bill passed by the United States Congress since the time that I was in the United States Senate. And so the impasse in terms of moving forward things in Washington has essentially meant that the energy world that we're seeing today is based on the legal framework that we created back in 2005 and 2006 and 2007, coupled with the executive actions that are being taken by the president. But all of that also recognizes that at the end of the day, much of what we're seeing in energy is being pushed by states and by local governments. So the renewable portfolio standards that you have in almost 2/3 of the states in the United States, you'd never be able to get that passed in the U.S. Congress today. I mean, there would be no way that you could get that done today. Maybe if things change in the future, you could get that done. But I think in the absence of action by our national government, that the states are doing a great job in terms of moving forward with a number of policies that are good for energy.
Forgive me, Mr. Salazar, but I don't think you could get anything passed in Congress right now. It seems a little tough.
That's very true, Bill. I mean, it's both the last Congress and this Congress, which is almost ending now, really have not been able to get a lot done.
Yeah. Well, I guess the only way to move this along is to keep persevering at the state and local levels. If folks want to have better energy independence, they ought to maybe work on local projects and try to get that done. We're coming up on our next hard break. We want to talk with Ken Salazar about the T. Boone Pickens plan to get 18-wheelers changed. That might save us a little energy as well. We'll do that in the next segment. We'll remind you that you're listening to the Costa Report.
Did you know that every day we create 2.5 quintillion bytes of data, and that 90% of the data in the world today has been created in the last 2 years alone? This data comes from everywhere, and it affects everyone. This data is big data. Big data is all data, and it's more than simply a matter of size. Big data represents an opportunity to uncover new insights, make your business more agile, and answer questions that were previously beyond your reach. IBM's Big Data platform uses sophisticated technologies and patented advanced analytics designed to complement your existing information infrastructure. The IBM Big Data platform allows you to get started quickly today and expand to address more complex problems tomorrow. It doesn't matter where you start, it matters that you start. Find out how IBM can help you turn big data into a competitive advantage by visiting ibm.com/bigdata today.
No matter what business you're in, what happens in Washington can make the difference between business success or failure. That's why understanding where government is headed is so important in today's competitive business environment. But where can you find experts who know firsthand the inner workings of our nation's capital? The American Program Bureau is your leading source for speakers whose experience offer unique insights into where U.S. policy is headed. Speakers like Seth Harris, former acting U.S. Secretary of Labor, Alyssa Mastromonaco, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff, and General Carl Eikenberry, former U.S. Ambassador to Afghanistan. For your next meeting or conference, contact the American Program Bureau at apbspeakers.com or 617-614-1600. That's apbspeakers.com. The American Program Bureau, making history one speech at a time.
Hi, registered pharmacist Ben Fuchs here. I've been studying healthy bodies for 35 years, and what I've got to tell you may shock and surprise you, but if you listen up, it may change your life.
Are you feeling angry or irritable, or maybe you're just depressed? Well, it may be that you're suffering from black bile.
At least that's what ancient doctors used to think. These days, while no one thinks depression is about black bile, unfortunately, we may have gone too far in the opposite direction by minimizing the significance of bile, which functions as a kind of digestive detergent, dissolving and freeing fats and fatty nutrients from foods. If you're one of the millions of Americans who's suffering from liver impairment, or if you've had a gallbladder removed, your bile detergent system may not be operating at peak efficiency. And because toxins are eliminated from the body via bile, in addition to helping process fats, it also supports detoxification. You may not be eliminating poisons from the body effectively either. A good probiotic supplement can help support the bile's detox role by encouraging bile's elimination from the body. And if you're interested in helping improve bile production, there are nutritional supplements that help there too. One of the easiest is to use supplemental bile salts. You can get them on their own, and many digestive enzyme supplements contain them too. You can also help your body build bile by using precursors, which act as raw materials for bile production. The amino acids taurine and glycine help the body build bile. You might want to throw in 500 milligrams of the B vitamin-like compound choline, which acts as a biliary building block, and vitamin C can help you make generous amounts of healthy bile, so making sure you're getting at least a gram or two a day is probably a good idea as well. Pharmacist Ben here, urging you to go to kscohealth.com to order Beyond Tangy Tangerine, the Healthy Start Pack, and other nutritional supplements that I personally use and recommend. You can purchase these premium quality products at wholesale prices online at kscohealth.com. That's kscohealth.com. I'm the pharmacist that believes that staying healthy and strong is not only about medicine, it's about giving your body the raw materials it needs to do its work. Go to kscohealth.com. Make sure you check out the cool videos, too, at kscohealth.com. That's kscohealth.com.
Welcome back to the Costa Report. I'm Bill Graff, sitting in for Rebecca Costa, who is in Australia today. Our guest is Ken Salazar. And before we move on and change gears from energy independence, I want to ask you about, have you heard about the Pickens plan? According to oil tycoon T. Boone Pickens, if we converted the 8 million 18-wheelers in our country to natural gas, we would probably be able to stop being dependent on OPEC. Have you heard about his plan?
I have, and have spoken several times with T. Boone Pickens. I think it's part of a solution, and that is the more that we are able to utilize natural gas, the better off we're going to be, because natural gas is abundant. We have a 100-year supply here in the United States. 2, it's less expensive. 3, it's an environmentally clean fuel.
Yeah.
So I think he's right.
Well, good. I hope maybe someday we could, because, you know, there's nothing worse than getting behind an 18-wheeler that hasn't had its engine properly maintained when you're going down the freeway. Holy smokes.
That's true.
Hey, changing gears for a moment, let's talk about part of your responsibility as the Secretary of Interior was to oversee the management of public lands and natural parks. And, you know, of course, we're having another horrendous fire season in the West. Just as more information is coming out about the realities of pyroterrorism and some other problems, we've had reports from government leaders that among the things recovered from Osama bin Laden's hideout were detailed plans on the economic blow which would be administered to the United States by using a match to set a forest fire. It seems to me that that's an area of security that's not really discussed very much. Can you talk about that publicly?
Well, it's you know, the threats against the United States from those who want to do us harm are many, and certainly many avenues that people could use, and certainly fires are one. You know, we have a huge number of fires in the United States. I think it's somewhere between 30 and 40,000 a year just on forest lands and open spaces. And so most of those fires are started by an act of God, by lightning. But there are many of those fires that are started by people who are careless around campfires or smokers who throw out a cigarette on, and it starts a fire. And so, you know, the reality of wildland fires is a big issue for the United States, but also could, in the right kind of scenario, create significant threats to our country, including to our national security.
You know, I never thought about it until I was reading what Rebecca wanted to ask you about today, and I was thinking, you know, what a job the Secretary of the Interior has. I mean, this is you have to think about a lot of different things. What about well, let me ask you this. If you could ask Sally Jewell, the current secretary, to tackle something you weren't able to do as the Secretary of the Interior, what would that be?
Yeah, I would ask her to change the name of the Department of Interior because it's not understood by a lot of people. The department does a huge amount of work in the area of conservation and energy, and in most places around the country, it really is not well understood that the role of Interior is a huge role. Has 73,000 employees, has responsibilities in all 50 states, out into America's oceans and the Outer Continental Shelf, from Alaska in the north to the Everglades to the south. Has huge, huge responsibilities, and because of the assets that it oversees, they create hundreds of thousands, millions of jobs in the United States, and so there's a big story a big contribution that the department and its employees make. But I think it's a department that is not well understood in the public. Public understands national parks. They may understand national wildlife refuges. They understand oil and gas and the Gulf of Mexico, but it's a very broad mission that the department has.
It sure is. Correct me if I'm wrong here. This is the department that oversees the most property in the United States. You're overseeing all of the land. So in a very brief description, the Department of the Interior oversees more than 20% of the land mass of the United States. It also oversees all of the ocean floor of the Outer Continental Shelf, from the Atlantic to the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic Sea. So it's a vast expanse. In any one of the states, California, for example, there are dozens of national parks from Yosemite to Alcatraz. Those are all units of the national park system. You have the wildlife refuges and fisheries that are overseen by the Fish and Wildlife Service. You have Indian issues, where you have in California hundreds of tribes and bands of Indians, and the responsibility for the United States falls on the Department of Interior with respect to that relationship. So it's a department that has a huge reach. Let me just say, from my point of view, Bill, I may have had the options to have done some other things on the cabinet, but I think that I had the best job in the United States because I was able to work on matters and travel to all 50 states. I was in Barrow, Alaska, and that with the Inuit, indigenous Eskimo people in the north. I was in the Everglades with the 4 million acres of the river of grass we're trying to restore in the Everglades. And in every single one of the states, we have spectacular parts of what is the legacy of the United States, legacies created by presidents in their times like Abraham Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt and John Kennedy. So it's a wonderful position to serve on the cabinet as secretary. We're running out of time here. Before we go, I would like to ask you, how can folks keep up with your activities and opinions? Do you have a website? I think we do have a website. I really not been very active in keeping up through those means. I'm mostly these days practicing law and helping out a few causes. I'm helping with an America's Conservation Political Action Committee, which is helping candidates who are running for office who have an interest in the conservation of America's land, water, and wildlife. We're doing it in a bipartisan way, supporting both Democrats and Republicans who have a sensitivity to our planet. So, but I don't. I think there may be a website, but I'm not even sure. Well, that's why there's Google.
Yeah.
Well, Ken Salazar, we want to. We've run out of time, unfortunately, but I have to say that your approach, pragmatic approach to energy and the environment, and your service to our country is something we must thank you for. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on the Costa Report.
Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate you being with us. If your station is leaving us after this first hour and you have a question or comment to make about our interview with Ken Salazar today, you can email us at RebeccaCosta.com or drop us a note on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and let us know whether Ken Salazar's practical approach to energy development was the right one. He set tougher conditions and standards on oil companies in exchange for leases and permits, but will those be enforced? Or over time, will our thirst for energy cause us to compromise even more, and until the point where we've lowered the bar enough to open the door for another Deep Horizon event? Let us know what you think. And by the way, if you missed the full interview with Ken Salazar today or any of our guests, remember you can download previous episodes of the Costa Report from the website, Apple iTunes, Podbean, and YouTube. And while you're at the website, make sure you order a copy of Rebecca's book, The Watchman's Rattle. If you think Rebecca is one of the smartest, most informed people on the radio today, well, that doesn't even come close to the book she's written about how every government and every human being eventually falls prey to complexity. You should really read the book. It's fascinating. Regulations, laws, oversight, processes, even basic information becomes too unwieldy, and when it does, we have a pattern throughout history of being, basing decisions and unproven beliefs rather than on facts. So Rebecca demonstrates in her book that that's the pattern that affects us now, and we may be in trouble. We'll be back with another hour of the Costa Report in just a moment or two. Rebecca will be back from Australia and behind the mic again next week when her guest will be physician and former Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist, one of the few leaders qualified to weigh in on where we stand on health care in the United States. Don't miss Bill Frist next week on the only news program which puts policy ahead of politics. Now stay tuned for the second hour of Straight Talk Radio. You're listening to the Costa Report.